Judge discovers incredible legal genius in court. 12-year-old black girl reveals her hidden IQ. Maya Sinclair felt like a ghost, watching from the shadows, unheard and unseen. The courthouse loomed before her, its imposing pillars holding a world of justice, yet also 1,000 unheeded dreams. She shuffled to the back, her heart racing as she snuck in, drawn by an intoxicating pull. Here was the arena where truth clashed with harsh reality, much like the battles she read of in her grandfather's worn legal tomes. But as she settled into the cool seat, she hesitated. Was she intruding? Would someone recognize her? But the drawer remained, and she couldn't turn back now. As the judge called the session to order, Maya's eyes widened, burning with focus. The trial was dissecting the struggles of families like hers, fighting against economic injustices that overshadowed their quaint southern town. With every word spoken, memories swirled within her. The late-night conversations whispered between her mother and their neighbor, the tremor in her mother's voice when bills came due. Maya clenched her jaw, adrenaline surging. She knew too well what was at stake and the profound implications of this court's decisions. Suddenly, her mother took the stand, visibly shaken. Maya's heart sank. She recognized that look, the weight of hopelessness putting her mother's voice out of reach, trembling words barely audible. Instinct propelled Maya forward, mind racing. The dusty pages of her grandfather's books flickered in her mind, illuminating arguments she had memorized, ideas about justice and the power of the young voice. "Your Honor, if I may..." The words escaped her before she could process the gravity of what she was doing. The courtroom fell silent, shocked faces turning her way, the judge's brow lifted in surprise. With each word that spilled from Maya's lips, her nerves flickered like an electric current. "What can a child know about law?" a part of her whispered, but the other half screamed for her to push forward. Every detail she recalled from her grandfather kindled a fire inside her, a voice that felt undeniably true. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Maya's pulse quickened as she sensed the shift in the room, a swell of tension blending admiration and skepticism. She stood there, alive and vulnerable, her insights reverberating across the courtroom. But the knowledge that she looked like the little girl from the neighborhood tugged at her fervor. Would they accept a young black girl as this vessel of change? Would they see her truth as powerful, or as just a child stumbling into adult spaces? She felt their eyes on her, the weight of their prejudice heavy in the air, almost suffocating. That moment felt monumental, yet within the electric buzz lay an undercurrent of fear gnawing at her gut. What if her brilliance was just a flicker? Would her mother be celebrated or lamented for raising a daughter who dared to speak? With every passing second, the courtroom, once a symbol of her dreams, draped an oppressive shroud over her sense of self. She was poised on a precipice, aching for validation while fearing the judgment that came with it. Could she be the voice for the unheard when it felt like she was still learning to find her own? As the gavel came down, signaling a point of no return, Maya's breath caught, clinging to hope yet paralyzed by doubt, waiting for the verdict of her very identity. With every heartbeat echoing her name, the courtroom leaned forward, holding its breath for what she would say next. Maya stood rooted to the spot, the weight of expectation hanging heavily in the air. Heart thundering, she felt momentarily suspended between the urge to retreat into the familiarity of her insecurities and the consuming fire of her conviction. She took a breath, channeling the encouragement from the pages of her grandfather's legal tomes echoing in her mind. They whispered of rights, justice, and the belief that one voice could tip the scales. "Your Honor," she began again, her young voice trembling yet resolute. "This isn't just about the law. It's about lives, families, choices. Every day, my mother struggles with decisions that shouldn't even be hers to bear." She watched as the judge's brow furrowed, a flicker of interest replacing the earlier surprise. Maya sensed the shifting tide. A ripple of chatter teased at the edges of the courtroom. Doubt clawed at her insides. Would sharing her truth strip her of the power it held? Her voice steadied as she glimpsed for a moment the person she could become, an advocate, a champion, a fierce protector of those who felt voiceless. The thought pushed away the frigid tendrils of fear entwining around her heart. With each syllable that flowed from her, Maya transformed her anxiety into purpose. These families are just like mine. They work hard, and yet they struggle day in and day out. For their children, for their future. We must remember that the law is supposed to protect the vulnerable, not capitalize on their weakness. Maya's parents had raised her with stories of resilience. They molded her heart with lessons of injustice in a world laden with barriers. Now, standing before the court, she felt stronger than ever. The moment she had dreamed of since flicking through old case files in her grandfather's attic had finally arrived. Yet there was still an elephant in the room. Would they see a bright legal mind in a child, or merely a girl out of her depth? She recalled a lecture from a lecture she had read about limits others would impose on her, the barriers to be shattered. With newfound clarity, she pushed those thoughts aside. She could no longer afford to ponder what others believed. As the judge began to respond, Maya leaned in further, her heart racing with fierce determination. In this moment, every hesitation fell away. She was not the girl from the neighborhood. She was someone who dared to question, to stand tall, to be the representative for other children unheard. In the resulting silence that enveloped the courtroom, Maya felt an unfamiliar presence of strength filling her. She had taken the step, and there was no going back. Her future remained uncertain, yet it tantalizingly lingered just out of reach. Little did she know. The gasp that echoed around the room extended beyond her voice. Whispers buzzed through the audience as she began to gain traction, her ideas crisscrossing paths with newfound relevance. Yet suspense and uncertainty brewed beneath the surface. Her mother was watching, her eyes glistening with pride and worry. Maya felt the connection, the hope layering like fragile paper over fears. But what would happen next? Would she leave the stand a voice for justice, or would she tumble back into the shadows? As applause erupted and the gavel came down, Maya sensed that more than her identity was on trial. Her very essence, her self-determined journey was just beginning. The next chapter beckoned with trepidation. It was clear she held wisdom beyond her years, but what challenges would ignite that brilliance, and could she endure the scrutiny that came with it? The moment of truth was approaching. Who would she be in the world that lay ahead, and were her efforts enough to change the narrative of her life forever? The applause faded, leaving a charged silence behind. Maya's pulse quickened as she caught the judge's sharp gaze. This was no longer just a fleeting moment of courage. It was a pivotal entrance into the unforgiving world of law and advocacy. Life beyond the courtroom loomed, filled with a promise of influence and the responsibility that accompanied it. Emboldened by her performance, but still reeling from the adrenaline, Maya stepped down from the stand, absorbing the lingering stares from the audience. Their expressions ranged from shock to admiration, but mingling within them was doubt. Doubt that she, a mere girl, could command the authority of the law. As she made her way toward her mother, fragments of conversations drifted around her like whispers of wind. Can it really be true? What's next for her? The uncertainty spoke to the deep-seated skepticism that resided within her own heart. Could she hold this newfound power? Was she equipped to change the narrative so deeply entrenched in her world? Her mother wrapped her arms around her, warmth enveloping Maya like a shield against the uncertainty that pressed in. Yet in the tender embrace, a flicker of concern sparked. Her mother's eyes mirrored a question. Would her daughter's tenacity withstand the trials that lay ahead? Motivated by the support, but burdened by the weight of expectations, Maya moved to a quiet corner of the courthouse. She needed to ground herself, to sift through the whirlwind of feeling and responsibility. The sterile walls, devoid of warmth save for a few framed portraits of judges, felt suffocating now, as if they could sense her internal struggle. Maya took a seat on the wooden bench, contemplating the echoes of her own voice. She had been convincing. Why hadn't she felt more secure? Why did doubt cling to her like a shadow? The echoes of her grandfather's words reverberated within her, urging her to face adversity with wisdom and grit. Suddenly a voice disrupted her thoughts. Maya! It was a classmate, Jason, who had come to watch her speak. He approached tentatively, admiration painted on his face. That was incredible. I didn't know you were so passionate about this stuff. His compliment brought a flicker of warmth to her uncertainty. She felt like a different person in that moment, a hint of confidence sparking beneath her doubt. Thanks, Jason. I just spoke what I felt. You should totally do more of this, he said, his enthusiasm palpable. Fight for rights or something. You could be like a lawyer. A wave of self-awareness washed over her. Why not? The idea hadn't ignited her imagination before, but there was potential there. It lodged like a bright ember, hinting at a path she might choose, one filled with the ambition she craved, yet feared. However, with this new thought emerged another wave of apprehension. What would her path look like? Was it even viable for someone perceived as too young or too inexperienced? A voice inside grappled for control, reminding her of the scrutiny she had barely escaped today. Maya, her mother's voice cut through the noise. We need to go. As they stepped outside, Maya's heart swirled with conflicting emotions, pulling tightly at the seams of her confidence and fear. In the fading afternoon light, a gust of wind rushed through, crisp and invigorating, as if heralding change. The exhilaration of her first stand had forged a crack in her past, a pathway she had never envisioned, revealing glimpses of a future ripe with possibility. Yet shadows of doubt taunted her. Could she find strength amid the challenges ahead? Her mind screamed answers she wasn't sure she could provide. Despite the chaos of the bubbling emotions, one undeniable truth settled within her. She couldn't turn back now. The earlier doubt had morphed into determination. The stage was set for unexpected challenges and revelations that awaited just around the corner. And little did she know, her next confrontation was looming, a test not only of her advocacy, but also of her resilience. The moment had come to face her fiercest critic yet, herself. Maya stood in the quiet of her room, the evening sun casting long shadows across the walls. The applause from earlier felt like a dream now, and the palpable warmth of her mother's embrace had dissipated into the cool air of reality. She gazed into the mirror, searching for the confident speaker who had captivated an audience. Instead, she saw the girl burdened by doubt, clouding her reflection. "Am I really capable of this?" she whispered to herself, frustration mingling with wonder. The very thought of being a lawyer, of wielding her voice with authority, sent a thrill through her. But the fear of failing loomed larger. The weight of expectations began to press once more, like a heavy mantle she didn't know if she could carry. Her thoughts shifted back to Jason's encouraging words. What did he see in her that she did not? Was passion enough to fuel this drive? Tension pulled at her stomach as she contemplated the undeniable truth. She had never truly allowed herself to dream this big. Maya plopped down at her desk, the surface littered with unfinished homework and legal books she had borrowed from the library. She picked one up, flipping through the pages absent-mindedly, until a particular line caught her attention. The law, is a constant evolution of justice. She paused, realization dawning. The law wasn't a rigid construct. It breathed and changed, much like her own ambitions. Inspired, she began to jot down thoughts in her journal, attempting to frame what she dreamed about within the confines of reality. What change would she advocate for? Who would her voice resonate with? Ideas spilled forth like water from a burst dam. She scribbled furiously, the weight lightening with each sentence, a manifesto of sorts, her aspirations spilling out onto the page. Yet as she wrote, the doubt returned. A gnawing voice in her mind critiqued her every word. "Who do you think you are?" It echoed relentlessly, feeding the storm that whipped through her heart like a tempest. Maya took a deep breath and closed her eyes, focusing instead on the moment she had stood before the judge. It wasn't just about speaking. It was about making change palpable. She could connect with others. She could listen and advocate for the voiceless. It was this realization that reignited her determination. She would not back down. The next morning after school, Maya found herself in the library, surrounded by towering shelves filled with legal tomes and endless pages of case studies. She needed to equip herself, gathering knowledge like armor before a battle. But knowledge required more than just academic pursuit. It demanded experience and exposure. Her gaze settled on a flyer pinned to a bulletin board, a local debate competition. "Perfect," she murmured under her breath, the thrill of a challenge beginning to bloom inside her. This could give her the platform to refine her skills, to sharpen her arguments, and confront the self-doubt that plagued her thoughts. But beneath her eagerness lay a persistent tremor of fear. What if she failed? What if she stood on that stage and faltered? The prospect of failure felt like a dark cloud looming on the horizon, and she wasn't sure how to navigate the storm ahead. With slightly trembling determination, she reached for her phone, her fingers hovering over the screen as she calculated whether to sign up. A mental tug-of-war played out within her. Comfort versus growth, safety versus challenge. But at that moment, clarity emerged through the chaos. Was it not better to confront her fears than remain in the shadows, wondering about the what-ifs? Before she could second-guess herself, her thumb pressed the button to register, an impulsive yet liberating choice. As she secured her spot, Maya could feel a trickle of excitement mingled with anxiety within her. She was stepping outside what she knew, ready to test herself against the currents of debate and public discourse. But would she truly be able to stand firm when challenged? With this new opportunity arose the unsparing necessity for self-awareness. The time had come to confront her imperfect yet determined self, to recognize that growth burgeons within discomfort. Little did she know, the imminent battle against her fears would set the tone for everything that lay ahead. And just as she closed her eyes to visualize her first argument, another concern crept in. Could she remain true to her voice while navigating a world filled with conflicting opinions? The morning of the debate competition dawned, with a heavy cloak of anxiety draped over Maya's shoulders. The sunlight streamed through her bedroom window, illuminating the meticulously arranged notes on her desk. They were a jumbled mix of arguments and counter-arguments, strategies woven with fragments of doubt. In the midst of it all, her journal lay open to a blank page, the ink barely dried from late-night scribbles. Maya's mind raced. She had rehearsed countless times, yet the fear of failure loomed like a massive shadow in the corners of her thoughts. What if her mind went blank? What if her voice trembled? The internal dialogue spiraled, echoing questions she had grappled with for weeks. She glanced at the clock, the ticking sound amplifying the urgency that bound her. A deep breath steadied her, and she recalled Jason's words from the night of the mock trial. Be authentic. Speak your truth. She closed her eyes again, envisioning herself on that stage, poised and powerful. The thought sent tingles through her, igniting the tiny spark of determination flickering within. Arriving at the venue felt surreal. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy, an ambiance thick with anticipation. Maya spotted other competitors, each exuding their own blend of confidence and anxiety, and for a moment she felt small among them. But she recalled the words she had written, a mantra of self-affirmation. I am capable. I will let my voice rise. She settled into her seat, her palms slick with perspiration as she awaited her turn. Each name called felt like a witness to her growing restlessness. As the minutes passed, the initial excitement morphed into something thicker, more palpable. It was a call to action. When the time finally came, she rose, weaving through the rows of chairs to reach the stage. The lights beamed down, making her squint, but she pushed through the discomfort, taking center stage. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears, a relentless reminder of the churning anxiety beneath the surface. Maya gripped the podium, the cool wood grounding her, anchoring her racing thoughts. She began speaking, voice tentative yet earnest. As she articulated her points, the texture of her arguments sharpened, transforming uncertainty into clarity. Each sentence flowed with an intent that surprised her, her words becoming more than mere statements. They were vessels of conviction, but that gnawing doubt crept in again, a whisper starving to reclaim its hold. What if they don't believe you? What if you falter? The temptation to retreat from the growing tension threatened to overwhelm her. Then she remembered a quote she had echoed numerous times while practicing. Effective advocacy requires not only mastery of content, but also the courage to be vulnerable. This was her moment to embrace vulnerability, to show what lay beneath the surface. With that thought, strength surged through her, and she refused to buckle under the weight of judgment. When her time was over, she felt an unfamiliar sense of relief wash over her. It was not victory she sought, but connection with herself and her audience. The applause erupted once again, and as she exited the stage, an infusion of clarity filled her. Realization hit. Her worthiness didn't lie in accolades alone, but in her audacity to share her truth. Still, as she made her way back to her seat, doubts fluttered like birds in her chest. Did she truly convey her message? Was she authentic? These questions lingered, making room for something more profound: awareness. The remainder of the event zoomed by, applause blending into a haze of exhilaration and lingering uncertainty. Each competitor had their own story to tell, their own voice to amplify. And she, too, had entered this arena of ideas. And for the first time, she began to recognize her place within it. But just as encouragement stirred towards positive growth, a new anxiety smarted at the edges of her consciousness. What awaited her after this? Would she carry this emboldened spirit beyond the stage and into her life, or would she slip back into the shadows of doubt that had so easily cloaked her before? The critical question haunted her as the competition concluded. Could she sustain this newfound confidence, or would fear still bind her? As she pondered the implications of her experience, another realization dawned. She was on the cusp of an evolution, one that would demand more than headway in debates. It hinted at the unraveling of the self she thought she knew. Maya sat silently in the aftermath of the debate, engulfed in a cocoon of wheeled thoughts and flickering emotions. The applause from the audience had faded, but the echo of her performance lingered, catching at the fringes of her consciousness like a half-remembered dream. She had crossed a threshold, revealing parts of herself she had long kept hidden, and now, faced with the reality of returning to the status quo, a strange sense of dislocation began to settle in. Confident strides back through the auditorium felt less like victory and more like navigating uncharted territory. Each competitor she passed seemed to inhabit a version of the world that was tightly aligned with their self-image. They wore expressions of ease or assuredness, and in contrast she battled an urge to question, to reassess every word she had spoken, every glance exchanged. Had she truly stepped into her power, or had she merely danced along the surface, swept away by fleeting applause? As she lingered in the lobby after the event, her mind grappled with the implications of her performance. Everyone had seen her at her most vulnerable, but did that vulnerability translate into strength? A gnawing thought embedded itself within her. She needed to evaluate what had changed. She returned to her journal, flipping to the page where her mantra resided. I am capable. I will let my voice rise. What would it mean to enforce that declaration beyond the stage? Would she really let her voice rise in the more mundane spheres of life? At school, during class discussions, even at home? Every new sphere presented different stakes, each carrying the echo of past hesitations. Her heart pounded at the thought of her peers' judgment. Taking a moment to breathe, Maya hunkered down, committing to a reflection on her experience. She had felt invigorated on stage, a commanding presence born of authenticity. What had flipped the switch for her? It was the acceptance of vulnerability, an openness that had allowed her to express herself freely. Determined to solidify this insight, she plotted actionable steps. First, she would engage in more open discussions with her classmates. The next day at school would be her testing ground. Every classroom conversation could be a chance to assert her newfound confidence and redefine her narrative. With every idea penned down, an unsettling mixture of excitement and fear percolated through her. Would she maintain this forward momentum? Could she genuinely reshape her presence in spaces that intimidated her? Would her classmates welcome this version of her? Amidst the swirl of potentialities, she recalled a vivid encounter with her English teacher, Mrs. Sawyer, who had once remarked, "The only way to solidify your voice is to practice speaking it in every corner of your life." It was time. If she faltered, she would remind herself that every misstep was part of the journey toward growth. As she prepared for bed, she tasked herself with a small challenge for the next morning. During the scientific debate in science class, she would voice her opinion unequivocally. Failure or success didn't matter. She simply needed to try, to stretch that muscle of conviction further. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, fresh determination intertwined with threads of anxiety. The path forward seemed tangled, filled with potential pitfalls, yet invigorated her with the promise of evolution. The dawning challenge took root in her mind, but the real trial loomed ahead. What would she uncover in the face of her fear? Morning light would soon unveil not just a new day, but the unveiling of who Maya could truly become, a voice unveiling hidden truths and undiscovered depths. Every interaction was now a stepping stone, and with it the question crystallized. Was she ready to face the deeper vulnerabilities that came with real intimacy and connection? Maya's heart raced as she stepped into the classroom, a whirlwind of nervous energy swirling inside her. The morning light filtered through the windows, filling the room with a warm glow that belied the internal storm. Today was the day she had committed to voicing her thoughts during the scientific debate, a public assertion of her identity that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As her classmates trickled in, the familiar buzz of casual conversation filled the space. Some leaned back in their chairs, while others huddled with notepads and laptops, scanning the material one last time. Maya observed them, a mix of admiration and anxiety flooding her system. They all seemed so grounded, so sure in their engagement with the ideas at hand. What if they questioned her, or worse, dismissed her altogether? The little voice within, which had whispered criticism for so long, now roared with doubts. Yet, in the back of her mind, the mantra pulsed. I am capable. I will let my voice rise. It was her lifeline. As the debate began, she focused on her teacher, Mr. Ellis, who introduced the topic, climate change and its implications. He divided the class into two sides and called for volunteers to challenge each other with perspectives and questions. The initial chatter faded away, replaced by a tangible tension in the air. Maya could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Her palms were sweaty, and a familiar lump formed in her throat. Yet, as she watched her classmates engage, she realized this was her opportunity to challenge not just the others, but herself. Everything she had practiced and reflected upon was leading to this moment. With a deep breath, she resolved to speak. When a boy from the opposing side shot out an assertion that climate change was a hoax, indignation surged within her. Actually, scientific consensus shows that climate change is real and poses serious risks to our planet, she interjected, surprising herself with the clarity of her voice. The room quieted, heads turning toward her, and for a brief moment panic clawed at her. But in that silence, Maya felt the vulnerability return, but this time it was infused with strength. She continued, "Data has shown average temperatures rising and increasing extreme weather events. It's not just a hypothesis, it's happening now." Her classmates began to respond, engaging her with their visions and questions. Maya felt each exchange sharpen her resolve, dismantling her fears as she became part of a dialogue rather than a solitary voice. She started to weave personal anecdotes into her responses, sharing how her family discussed environmental changes over dinner, a slice of her life that made her arguments more relatable, personal. As the debate progressed, each contribution helped her build momentum, her insights growing bolder. She could see attentiveness in her peers' eyes, the way they leaned in during her points, actively processing her words. It was intoxicating. The vulnerability she had initially agonized over transformed into empowerment, the feeling of being heard reverberating through her. By the time the debate concluded, a hesitant applause rippled through the room. Maya's heart swelled with emotion. She had done it. She had not only spoken, but had shaped the discourse. As her classmates congratulated each other, her focus shifted. This encounter was only a step, a glimpse of her capability. The bell rang, shaking her out of a euphoric daze. She felt lighter, as if unseen chains had been lifted. Maybe she could extend this growth beyond just the classroom. Suddenly, amidst the laughter and chatter of her classmates, a familiar face caught her eye. It was Sarah, a girl she had always thought of as the epitome of confidence, taking strides toward her. There was a fierce determination in Sarah's gaze that intrigued Maya, as if she were ready to challenge Maya directly. Maya's breath hitched. The time had come to face not just her classmates, but also the shadows of self-doubt she had often avoided. What would Sarah bring to the table? And more importantly, how would she respond? The moment was charged with anticipation, igniting new questions in Maya's mind. Was she ready to assert her place among her peers? And what deeper truths would she uncover if she allowed herself to connect? Maya took a step back, momentarily overwhelmed by Sarah's fierce approach. Memories of their last interaction flooded her mind, when Sarah easily dismissed her ideas on a group project, hinting that Maya was just too timid to make a real impact. That moment of quiet condescension had burrowed deep, and now it rushed back like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her newfound confidence. "Hey, Maya," Sarah said, her words sharp yet softened by a hint of surprise. "I didn't expect you to speak up like that in the debate. Pretty impressive." Maya's stomach twisted with conflicting emotions. Was this a genuine compliment or a veiled jab? "Thanks," she managed, her voice wavering slightly. "Your points were strong too." This brief exchange sparked a flicker of determination in Maya. Seeing Sarah's confidence up close ignited something in her. Could she transform this moment of anxiety into an opportunity for growth? But the thrill of possibility coexisted with apprehension, amplifying the urgency within her to step into her own power. "Listen," Sarah continued, taking a seat beside her. "I want to collaborate on the next project. You have a unique perspective that I think would be valuable." Maya's heart raced. There it was, the chance to explore her ideas within a collaborative context, but also the potential for invalidation. "Are you sure? You don't need to." "I'm sure," Sarah replied firmly. "You showed during that debate that you have something to say. I want you to be a part of this. We could make a strong team." As Sarah's words settled, Maya felt a familiar echo of doubt rise within her. What if she couldn't contribute enough? What if this partnership highlighted her flaws rather than her strengths? Yet, woven within that doubt was the third glance back at the debate, the moment she had discovered her own abilities. Maya realized that this was a decision point for her. Would she retreat into her comfort zone, risking stagnation, or would she embrace the collaborative effort and all the uncertainties it might bring? Taking a breath, she made a choice. "Okay," Maya replied, her voice steadier now. "Let's give it a shot." But even as she spoke, an undercurrent of anxiety persisted. Was joining forces with someone like Sarah a brilliant move or a doorway to more self-doubt? In the following days, as they began to work together, Maya dove into the role, feeding on Sarah's assertiveness while sharing her own insights. She witnessed how her ideas flourished under Sarah's drive, and slowly the initial tension began to unwind. For every concept Sarah proposed, Maya countered with research and data, each exchange building her confidence brick by brick. Yet a lingering feeling of imposter syndrome crept in whenever Sarah commanded the conversation. Maya would find herself holding back, hesitating to voice her thoughts, fearful of overshadowing her partner or, inversely, of being overshadowed herself. They faced a pivotal moment when they had to present their findings in front of their class. During the rehearsals, Maya found herself constantly altering her contributions, trying to measure them against Sarah's confident delivery. Each time her voice lingered just beneath the surface, the shock of inadequacy jolted her. The night before the presentation, she sat at her desk, feeling the weight of the looming challenge. Gripped by a breathless mix of anxiety and determination, she realized that this experience could either refine her abilities or cement her self-doubt. Looking at her notes, she envisioned how strengthening her voice might transform not just this project, but how she viewed her place in the class, the echo of the debate still thrumming in her heart. But the fear of rejection loomed large. Would she dare to challenge the doubts that had long dictated her actions, or would she let them drown her in another moment of hesitance? The clock kept ticking while the decision hung tenuously in the air, forcing her to confront her deepest fears once again. Maya took a deep breath. The next morning would reveal much more than just their presentation. Would she trust herself to rise beyond mere partnership and fully engage her voice once and for all? When dawn broke, Maya felt as though she had been mid-fall during the night, her progress suspended between confidence and self-doubt. As she prepared for the day, the reflection in the mirror stared back at her, both a stranger and a familiar friend. She straightened her posture, attempting to shake off the doubts that clung like shadows. Today was pivotal, and she needed to own her space. Arriving at school, the air felt charged with anticipation. She spotted Sarah, a whirlwind of energy, chatting with classmates and exuding confidence. The contrast of their two approaches heightened Maya's insecurity. Sarah, who always seemed to thrive in the spotlight, stood tall, while Maya felt like a mere observer, tethered to the sidelines. Yet something deep inside stirred, a need to challenge herself to break free. As they gathered in the classroom with their peers, Maya took a moment to ground herself. The presentation before them didn't only represent their project, but also her opportunity to reclaim her narrative. She had joined this partnership with purpose. There was knowledge bubbling within her that begged to be expressed. When their turn came, Maya's heart raced. Sarah launched into the introduction, commanding the attention of their classmates with ease. Maya stood beside her, gripping the edges of the presentation board, her knuckles white. But just as she began to mentally retreat, She recalled the exhilaration she felt during the debate, the spark that ignited within her when she discovered the power of her own voice. "Let's dive into the key findings," Sarah transitioned, gesturing towards something on the board. In an uncharacteristic swell of courage, Maya interrupted. "Actually, there's a critical component I'd like to address," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The room fell silent as she took control of the next segment. With each word, she saw the shift in her classmates. They were no longer simply her peers, but a receptive audience. As she presented research she had painstakingly gathered, she noticed Sarah nodding with approval, a small yet significant acknowledgement. The rush coursing through her veins transformed her anxiety into electricity, and in that moment she sensed her earlier doubts starting to crumble. Responding to a question posed by a classmate, Maya felt a surge of clarity wash over her. She voiced complex ideas, intertwining facts and opinions into a coherent argument that captivated the room. The growing resonance of her voice pushed aside the imposter syndrome that had long overshadowed her contributions, revealing pieces of her intellect she had been too afraid to showcase. As they wrapped up their presentation, Sarah turned to Maya, the surprise in her eyes unmistakable. "You absolutely killed it," she said, and for the first time it felt genuine, not just a commentary on their collaboration, but a recognition of Maya's individual brilliance. In that moment, an undercurrent of respect had been established, and Maya savored it, a feeling she had once thought unattainable. Still buzzing with adrenaline, Maya realized their partnership had blossomed into something profound. It wasn't merely about sharing the workload, it was about fostering growth, exchanging ideas, and respecting differing strengths. She had carved out her voice, and it had been heard. But as they returned to their seats, an unexpected gnawing settled back into her gut. Had she merely scratched the surface of her potential, or was there more to unveil within her? What lay beyond this presentation? She sensed a deeper challenge ahead, one that would test her resolve and illuminate her path. Sarah leaned in, enthusiastic and invigorated. "Let's push for that extra credit presentation opportunity. I think we could really excel." Maya felt a familiar flicker of apprehension return, yet it was followed by an exhilarating pulse of readiness. This was not just another project. It was a reflection of who she was learning to become. The question loomed large. Would she embrace this challenge wholeheartedly and step into the future she was beginning to envision? Or would she retreat once again into the safety of her doubts? As the possibilities unfolded before her, Maya understood this was more than an academic pursuit. It was a test of her very own determination. And in that moment, the horizon of her potential loomed vast and inviting, yet unsettlingly unknown. Maya Sinclair stood in the bustling hallway of her school, a kaleidoscope of emotions whirling inside her. She had just emerged from her successful presentation, a pivotal moment that felt like a blossoming of her true self. The applause still echoed in her ears as she navigated through her peers, now more like allies than mere classmates. With each confident stride, she could feel the momentum of her identity taking shape, a young woman unapologetically stepping into her power. Reflecting on her journey from the timid girl who once sat silently in classrooms, Maya felt a surge of pride. She had transformed her vulnerabilities into strengths, channeling everything from the warmth of her mother's embrace to the inspirational lessons from her grandfather into actions that demanded to be seen and heard. She was no longer just a girl reciting facts. She had become a voice advocating for change, a representative for the unheard. Just days prior she had feared being invisible. Now she had confronted her fears head-on and boldly claimed her space. As she entered her favorite quiet corner of the library, Maya finally let the reality of her achievement wash over her. Glancing at the legal tomes on the shelves, she smiled. This was her path, marked by the lingering battles fought within her and the victories she had begun to secure. It was here that she made a conscious decision. She would pursue her passion for advocacy further. Inspired by the debate and her collaborative project with Sarah, Maya decided to launch a small initiative at school, focusing on raising awareness for environmental issues. She recognized the power in shared knowledge, transforming it into a platform where students could voice concerns and explore solutions together. Weeks passed as Maya organized meetings with peers, crafting a vision that unified them through environmental stewardship. To her surprise, she gained traction quickly. Her classmates rallied around her cause, bridging discussions to action and enhancing her confidence even further. Their collective enthusiasm fueled her passion, proving that even the smallest voice could garner strength when shared. One afternoon, as she prepared materials for the upcoming club meeting, she received an email from the school administration. It was an invitation to present her initiative at the upcoming school assembly. The weight of recognition bore down on her, and yet rather than fear, exhilaration surged within. On the day of the assembly, Maya stood backstage, a flurry of nerves and excitement coursing through her. The auditorium was packed, a sea of faces that both intimidated and inspired her. When her name was called unapologetically, she strode onto the stage, her heart steady in a rhythm of determined purpose. As she spoke, her voice transcended apprehension, exuding a conviction forged through countless trials. The audience listened with rapt attention as she articulated her vision for a greener future, a heartfelt plea that blossomed from her lived experiences. In that climactic moment, as her words cascaded across the auditorium like a melodic call to action, Maya felt an intoxicating sense of fulfillment. The applause that erupted was not a mere echoes of appreciation. It was recognition of her journey, her evolution, a celebration of her newfound identity. Maya now stood confidently at the forefront of her aspirations, transformed significantly from the girl who watched from the shadows. The courtroom from her past had become a conceptual chamber where her voice could resonate beyond mere moments, fueling change, sparking connections, and igniting her place in the world. With her initiative underway and new opportunities unfolding, Maya Sinclair emerged not just as a student, but as a force of nature. She had harnessed her collected wisdom and clarity, proving that she was indeed capable of greatness. She was more than a little girl, now a courageous advocate, bearing the effects of her newfound competence into an uncertain future brimming with possibilities. And as she gazed into the faces before her, friends, classmates, teachers, she smiled, recognizing the truth of her academic and personal journey. She had not only conquered her fears, but had established a legacy that would inspire others to rise, amplifying their own voices in the world. This was just the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.